Dr. Stone, episode 13. So, we're kicking off Dr. Stone again, second core, finally back up. And it starts off with giving us the backstory of Xeno and Stanley and how they met. And really love how Xeno just kind of resembled a lot of early Senku, just trying out certain things. Although it was like with heavy weapon artillery, so it's kind of like completely different than what Senku started off with, but also kind of in the realm of what he likes more, but still having that same energy of like wanting to learn, wanting to do trial and error, which he does fail at using this railgun that he made because he didn't get quite the right angle, and Stanley comes along and just kind of fixes that for him, and it's like, yeah, here you go. It's not luck, it's just skill. And I love that Xeno is is kind of telling Stanley about like how wonderful science is and how elegant it is to just wanna he wants to keep learning and keep reaching new conclusions, and as long as there's more to learn, there's more to gain. And Stanley kind of takes a notice of how excited Seno got while talking about science, and he realized, well, if I stick with them, like something good might happen. So he kind of agrees to allow Seno to show him the light of science, and they shake hands, and it's like one of those things that Seno's like, yeah, I never actually got to experience shaking hands with somebody else, and then it's like, well, would you look at that? We're kind of, at least in that aspect, we're pretty much the same. So with that, you can already see that because Seno and Stanley have have their own quirks, or they have their own thing that they like. Stanley using weapons and Seno doing science. These two were probably isolated from their peers and kind of ostracized or not looked at enough, and did not really have a lot of close friendships. But because they have this kinship where they're both kind of like isolated and they're both chasing something they both love, they grew this friendship with one another. And love that that's how the episode kind of starts off, with Zeno looking back or dreaming about the time he met Stanley, and then the opening hits, which the opening fire, it is so good. Like the visuals, the song, it all matches up. It's still like a little step down from last core, but I think it's so well done so far. 2 out of 2 in openings. And then we go and we start they start this like mini recap of like the last few episodes of the season of the last course, so anybody that just kind of tuning in can kind of like gauge where they're at and what's gonna happen next. So if you didn't watch the last core, just watch like the first minute or two of this episode and you'll be caught up. No biggie. um so the essential plan is they're trying to avoid Stanley, as he's most likely gonna go chase them down to the ends of Earth, like he said he would, and try to get Xeno back. And their job is to figure out how to get to South America and to the origin of where the petrification stuff happened before Stanley can get his hands on them. So to be able to achieve this, the most likely thing to happen, or the most unlikely thing to happen, however you want to point it out, uh, Seno and Senku realize, well, we have the two most brilliant minds here. What if we work together to try to actually locate where the origin of the petrification beam started? And in that aspect, Seno and Senku are like, yes, we're both scientists, like instead of like being, since we're here now, we might as well instead put our differences aside and start working together to figure things out. So as they're both sharing notes, we get to a nice conclusion, or like a nice reveal, that Seno actually realizes that uh, the petrification beam was sent in by somebody at the moon. So like Senno knows about the he doesn't necessarily know about Y-Man, but he knows that the moon is very important to uncovering all the secrets to the petrification beam. So he's also he's all in the know now, just with everybody else. And then we get the side of like Senno's people and what's happening there on that side, and we have Matsukase, who is injured from the last assault, and he uses that as a way to sneak on board where he knows Ginro is. And to poor guy's fault, he doesn't realize Ginro was actually there because he's scared and he wanted to avoid going with Senku and them. He's not there to do any kind of like reconnaissance work. He's just there trying to live, and he kind of just tells him like, I know you're here to scout and do some reconnaissance work. Very brave of you, and I'm just here to assist you in any way I can. And Ginro kind of freaks out because Matsukase kind of just like collapses because his injury is actually quite severe. Like he is not resting like he should, and it's probably like reopening up the wound even worse. And then we go back to Senko's crew and what's happening there, and Chrome just goes to Francis and tells him like, hey, let me pour the tea, because he has like ulterior motives, as he realizes both Senku and Zen are like the two most brilliant minds there. So he's like, they're probably working on a lot of mathematics, a lot of scientific stuff, and it's gonna be very important for me to like get in there, try to understand what they're saying, and really be more prepared for on what to do next. So he went in there trying to get more knowledge, and until he decided to open up, Senku and Senna were just blowing bubbles. So it was really a nice, like, oh, they're probably very professional, to, oh no, they're just silly people that have big brains, which that ends up being true. They're both very professional, but also very silly, yes, because the bubbles are gonna kind of representing what the petrification beam was gonna be like, and they tried using that as a way to like dictate how the beam travels. And Crumb realized something very important, that if it did go from the south upwards, then Senku, being in the opposite direction of Senno, would have to be who would have to start petrifying from the ground up. But he remembers that Senku told him that he actually got to see the petrification beam through the horizon, so it wasn't that it came from the ground up. So just from that, we can already tell, and based on like previous stuff that's happened, it probably means there was more than one petrification beam, and it was probably like scattered all over the globe, or scattered enough to where everybody got hit from the head down. And then also like they start trying to explain to Chrome about replicating like certain test results by saying something about like, if a person can see a ghost, then it really doesn't mean much to a scientist unless they can constantly keep proving that the same person can see ghosts over and over. Then it's worth something of scientific value. And then we have like the nice shot of like Seno and Senku is still trying to do their stuff. And it pretty much ends off with like them having to cross their minds and work together to figure out like the exact location, which ends up looking like it's gonna be somewhere in the Amazon, I believe. So good stuff. Oh, and from the other side, we do get to see what happened with Matsukase and Ginro, and Stanley was really intelligent and really much of a pulling a bluff on Ginro, where he pretended that he was gonna end up shooting Matsukase because he wanted to find out where Senku and the crew were, and Matsukase wasn't covering up that info. So he realized, well, if he's here, there's probably somebody on board that he's trying to protect. So then Ginro kind of gives his position off and blabs to everybody that Senku's going to South America. So now we have Stanley knowing where to go, and because their vessel is so much better equipped for travel. They're probably gonna catch up to Senku more so than get left behind. So I'm really interested to continue talking about Doctor Stone again. It's one of my favorite series. I absolutely love the crew. I love how everybody has to play a role, and even in the opponent's side, they all have their own role to play and their own strengths. And I just love that now we have one of the two smartest people working together instead of like working against each other. So really interested to see if Stanley catches up and whatnot. So uh this episode's like a 8 out of 10 for me.